I've got a story to tell, one that still sits heavy in my chest. My name's Caleb, and if life has taught me anything lately, it's this. Some lies don't come wrapped in red flags. They come dressed as jokes, slipped into moments you thought were safe. Sometimes they're dressed up as jokes disguised as harmless fun. People will say something shocking, and the moment they see your reaction, they'll laugh it off and call it a prank. But here's the truth. Not everything that gets labeled as a joke is funny. And some so-called pranks? They reveal exactly what a person really thinks about you. I found that out in the most brutal way possible on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. In front of all our friends, our families, and the people who mattered most, my fiancé pulled a stunt that made me question everything. At that moment, I had a choice: laugh it off and pretend everything was fine, or walk away. Continue watching to see what happens when someone crosses a line they should have never crossed. This one is a lesson in knowing when to stand up and walk away. I was in a relationship with a woman named Anne for a little over a year. At the time, I genuinely believed she was the one. Our relationship had its ups and downs. The usual disagreements every couple goes through. If you had asked me back then, I would have told you that Anne was everything I wanted in a partner. It felt like we understood each other on a level that most people didn't. I loved her in a way that made her happy. Your flaws seem small. That's how I thought love was supposed to work. You don't just pick someone for the good parts. You choose to love them completely, imperfections and all. When I proposed to, and it wasn't some last-minute decision or something I did just because it felt right in the moment, I had thought about it long and hard. I was serious about her, and I wanted a future with her. The moment she said yes, I felt like I was stepping into a new chapter of my life, one that I was fully prepared for. I wasn't one of those people who believed in dragging out an engagement for years. To me, if you know you want to marry someone, why wait? So, almost immediately after the engagement, we started planning the wedding. I wanted to make her my wife as soon as possible, and she seemed just as excited about it as I was. At least, that's what I thought. As the wedding day got closer, I found myself caught between two strong emotions: excitement and nervousness. On one hand, I was thrilled. I had asked Anne to marry me because I truly loved her. I imagined the two of us waking up together every morning and growing old side by side. That's what I wanted. But at the same time, there was this undercurrent of nervousness that I couldn't ignore. Marriage wasn't just some fun event, it was permanent. I wasn't going into this expecting to back out if things got tough. I wanted to get it right because I knew that once I made those vows, I was in it for the long haul. It wasn't that I doubted Anne or my love for her. I didn't. It was just the realization that this was it. No more me, only us. Every decision, every plan, every problem. We would be tackling it together. That kind of commitment wasn't something I took lightly. But even with those nerves, I kept telling myself I had made the right choice. That's why I pushed the nerves aside and focused on what mattered. I was about to marry the woman I loved. And that was enough. The morning of my wedding felt surreal. The sun was bright and there was an almost electric excitement in the air. The venue was packed with familiar faces, family members I hadn't seen in years, childhood friends who had watched me grow up, and even distant cousins who had traveled miles just to be there. Everywhere I looked, people were smiling, chatting, and taking photos, dressed in their finest outfits. The atmosphere was warm, full of laughter and celebration. As I scanned the crowd, my eyes locked onto someone I never expected to see: Logan. My fiancé's ex-boyfriend. At first I thought maybe I was mistaken, but no. It was definitely him. He was standing there, blending into the sea of guests. He wasn't just some random guy from her past. He was the same man Anne had spoken about with such disgust. The same man she claimed had been a mistake, someone she regretted ever dating. She had called him toxic and selfish, and had even laughed about how she wasted time on him. So why in the world was he here? For a moment, I tried to make sense of it, and never mentioned inviting him. We had gone over the guest list together multiple times. I remembered because we had to cut down the number of people for budget reasons. Some of my own people didn't make the final list. So how did Logan, of all people, get an invite? While a mix of emotions started to bubble up, I didn't let it show. This was my wedding day. And the last thing I wanted was to start getting worked up over something I didn't fully understand yet. I took a slow breath and kept my cool. Whatever this was, I would deal with it later. The music played softly in the background, setting a tone for what was supposed to be the most important moment of my life. I stood at the altar, my heart pounding. I watched as she walked down the aisle, arm in arm with her father. She looked beautiful, exactly as I imagined she would on this day. Her dress flowed perfectly, and for a moment everything felt right. I told myself that this was it, the beginning of forever. The ceremony moved along as PLC and ad. The guests watched, and I could feel the weight of the moment settling over me. Then just as we were about to exchange vows, and did something that wasn't in a schedule, she reached for the microphone. At first, I didn't think much of it. She probably wanted to say something sweet or a quick thank you to the guests, or even something sentimental about how much she loved me. But I was wrong. Before we continue, she said, I just want to acknowledge the love of my life, Logan. The room went silent. I looked around, trying to process what had just happened. Some guests let out awkward chuckles, unsure of whether this was supposed to be funny. Others shifted in their seats, visibly uncomfortable. My own family looked frozen, as if they weren't sure whether they had misheard her. I turned my eyes toward Anne, but her expression told me everything. She had said exactly what I thought she had. I didn't need to look far to find Logan. He was right there, sitting among the guests, a smug smile on his face. I couldn't tell if he had been expecting this, or if he was just as blindsided as I was, but at that moment, it didn't matter. And then, just as I was trying to catch up with reality, and let out a laugh, she waved her hand like it was nothing, and said, Relax, it's just a prank. A prank? That's what she called it. I stared at her. A flood of thoughts filled my mind all at once. How do I marry someone who thinks this is funny? Does she have any idea how humiliating this is? I was about to dedicate my life to her, and she just made a joke out of it. I looked around the room. Some guests were visibly uncomfortable, and a few looked entertained, as if this was some kind of reality TV show moment. And, meanwhile, was still smiling, expecting me to laugh it off, to just go along with it like it was looked in straight in the eye, and said, Well, since we're doing pranks, here's mine, I'm pulling out of this wedding. For a second, it was like the entire room had forgotten how to breathe. The laughter that had been bubbling in the air moments ago died instantly. I watched Aizen's expression shifted in slow motion. She wasn't laughing anymore. A few people whispered in hushed tones, some turning to their neighbors, unsure if they had heard me correctly. The officiant, standing just a few feet away, looked frozen, as if waiting for someone to tell him what to do next. But there was nothing to do. I had already made my decision. I didn't wait for, and to respond as I turned around and walked out. I didn't look back. As I made my way toward the exit, I could hear the commotion erupting behind me. Some people were trying to process what had just happened. Others weren't holding back their reactions. I caught bits and pieces of it as I walked. Did he just leave? Someone muttered. Serves are right. Another voice chimed in. But then there were those who didn't agree with what I did. This is insane, someone said, probably one of her relatives. He's being dramatic. Then came Sienna. I could hear her heels clicking against the floor as she ran after me. Caleb, wait. Please. Her voice was shaking. A mix of panic and desperation. I didn't stop because I was too angry and humiliated. It was a joke. Please don't do this. She kept pleading. A joke? Maybe if it had just been the two of us in private, and she had immediately apologized the second she saw my reaction. Maybe I would have processed it differently. But she had done it in front of our families, our friends, in the middle of the most important day of our lives. And she expected me to laugh it off. I wasn't laughing. She had caught up to me just before I could step outside and grab my arm. Please, Caleb, just listen to me, she begged. Her eyes already red and glossy with tears. I didn't mean it like that. But I wasn't in the mood for explanations. I shook her hand off and kept moving. As I got into my car, I could still hear her calling my name. I shut the door, started the engine, and pulled out the parking lot. That was it. I was gone, and there was no coming back from this. As I drove back to my apartment, the calls didn't stop. One after the other, and her mom, her sister, even a couple of mutual friends. My phone was vibrating so much. Then came the texts. The first few were the usual. Caleb, please pick up. It was just a joke, baby. You know I love you, right? But as the hours passed, they changed. She went from apologizing to getting defensive. I can't believe you embarrassed me like that. How could you walk out like that? And then, like clockwork, she switched back to pleading. I swear, I didn't mean it that way. Please talk to me. I didn't respond to a single one. Her family got involved soon after. Her mom left a voicemail. Her tone all sugar-coated concern. Caleb, sweetheart, I know you're upset. But this is just a misunderstanding. And loves you. Call me back. Her sister tried guilt-tripping me. Do you really want to throw away everything over one mistake? Even her dad, who had barely spoken to me before, suddenly had something to say. Be a man, Caleb. Work this out. But none of them were in my shoes. None of them felt the gut punch of hearing their fiancé call another man the love of her life at their own wedding. That night, I sat in my apartment, feeling the weight of everything crashing down. But instead of breaking, I just felt numb. That's when I did something I should have done a long time ago. I started digging. If Anne could play games, I wanted to see just how long she had been playing. I scrolled through her social media, looking for anything I might have missed before. That's when I saw it. Vinny had been reacting to her post for months, liking pictures, leaving little heart emojis, commenting on her stories. And she had been responding, not just liking his comments, but engaging, laughing at his jokes, sending little playful replies. Nothing outright incriminating, but enough to make me feel like an idiot. This was the same guy she told me was a mistake. The same guy she swore she regretted ever being with. So why was she still talking to him? I kept scrolling. The more I saw, the more clicked. And never really let go of Vinny. She kept him at arm's length, close enough to stay connected, but far enough to keep me from noticing. And the worst part? If she had never pulled that stunt at the wedding, I probably would have gone my whole life never knowing. There was no solid proof they were involved again, but honestly, at that point, I didn't need proof. I had all the answers I needed. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, trying to process everything. The thing that hit me the hardest was the absolute lack of regard for what that moment meant to me. Marriage isn't some high school game where you pull pranks and laugh it off. It's about trust, about having each other's back in front of the world. If she could do this in public, what would she be capable of behind closed doors? I shook my head, exhaling sharply. I dodged a bullet. No doubt about it. If I had gone through with that wedding, I would have spent my life walking on eggshells, wondering when the next joke would come, waiting for the next moment where I'd be the punchline of some twisted sense of humor. That wasn't love. That was humiliation, disguised as playfulness. And if she truly loved me, she would have never risked hurting me like that, not even for a second. Love isn't just about emotions, it's about respect. And respect means knowing where the line is and never crossing it. As I sat there, my phone lit up again, but this time it wasn't Sienna. It was my friend, Marcus. I let it ring for a second before answering. Man, he said the moment I picked up, you did the right thing. His voice was firm, with no hesitation. I didn't need anyone to validate my decision, but hearing it from someone who knew me, who saw the same thing I did, made it feel even clearer. I had walked away from something that would have cost me my peace, my dignity, and possibly my future. So now, I want to leave you with 2 lessons I learned from this situation. First, love without respect is just an illusion. You can love someone with your whole heart, be ready to give them everything, and believe in them with all you've got. But if they don't respect you, if they don't value your dignity, your feelings, your presence, then that love isn't real. It's an illusion you've created for yourself, hoping that love alone will be enough to hold things together. But it won't. Love without respect is like a house without a foundation. It might look beautiful on the outside, but the moment a storm comes, it collapses. And that's exactly what happened at my wedding. Second, if your partner humiliates you and calls a joke, you don't need a wedding, you need an exit plan. Some people will say, "Oh, it was just a prank," or "Don't take it so seriously," but let's be honest. Disrespect, wrapped in laughter, is still disrespect. If someone cares about you, they won't put you in a position where you have to wonder whether or not they actually love you. They won't play games with your commitment, your future, or your dignity. A wedding isn't a joke. A marriage isn't something you treat like a social experiment to see how much your partner can take before they snap. So if you ever find yourself being treated like that, like a punchline instead of a partner, don't waste time trying to fix it. Walk away. Now I want to hear from you. Now tell me, if you were in my position, what would you have done? Would you have stayed? Would you have laughed it off? Or walked away like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I'd really love to hear your perspective. And if you've ever been in a moment where someone crossed a line and brushed it off as a joke, share that too. You never know who might need to hear they're not alone. That's all from me today. Thanks for sticking around till the end, it truly means a lot. And remember this, love should lift you up, not tear down your sense of worth. Take care of yourselves, and each other.